What's up, my Yugi Bros? I'm your host, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. So, today was ARGCS in DC, that's a lot of letters, and two of my favorite decks in a little while have topped today, mostly because they're two hybrid builds in a way that hasn't been done yet. The hands have been splashed into a lot of things, but they have yet to, as far as I've seen, be splashed into Geargia, which has generally been played as pure as possible. So this build is really interesting to me. And then, of course, the Medolce deck that got first place used a TG engine, which I actually thought was really cool. So I'm going to go through the deck list and look at a couple of the choices of Aaron Fulman, who ran Hand Gears during the ARGCS today. He got second place, and this is actually a pretty cool build that seems to be focused very much on huge explosive plays and just putting out a lot of field presence in a very small period of time. So let's look at the deck list, and then I'll take a look at some of the choices that were made. First off, of course, you've got the two of each hand. It doesn't seem that he ran three because it doesn't look like it would have fit with the strategy that he was running and with all of the back row that he was running. And it doesn't really make sense to run three of each of the hand, especially since you don't know which matchups you're going to be facing at a time. It makes sense to have the two and then focus on the Geargia strategy, and then if you really need to have the other ones, then you can bring them in. Two is consistent. I usually say one is attack, two is consistent, three is dependency, and he really doesn't depend on the hands. So then you've got, of course, the triple arsenal, triple accelerator, triple armor, triple MK2, and, of course, the one Geargiano, which is just the standard play for this deck. Then you've got one mind control. You're going to be facing against a lot of level 4s this format that are just going to be sitting around on the field as opposed to going straight for the extra deck, which used to be a fairly common thing last format. Mind control is a good card because it allows him to extend plays through various things, be able to go for things like Giant Hand and be able to sit on that using your opponent's monsters. Just a very, very good format for this deck in particular to be using Mind Control. Then you've got Dark Hole, two soul charges, which allows him to make really big plays, especially considering the fact that he runs Daigusto Emerald, which I think is a really good choice, considering the fact that he goes through a lot of Xyz plays. And then, of course, he's got the double soul charge, which allows him to extend those Xyz plays further. It makes a lot of sense to me that he runs the Daigusto Emerald, which he can go into recycle a couple of those Xyz monsters like Geargia Hand Cross into the extra deck, and then he can go for Soul Charge and continue to make a really big play. Book of Moon is fairly staple in this deck. Then we go on to the trap lineup, which is kind of insane. So you've got your three Geargia gear, which makes sense, and then you've got your staples, you've got your, you've got your Warning, your Bottomless, Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare is something that you're seeing a lot this format. And it makes sense for him to be running it since it allows him to make plays against things like artifacts, which have effects that activate during your turn. You can just blast away that Moral Talk and have no problem with it. You can stop 101. You can just stop a lot of cards with Trap Trick, Trap Hole Nightmare. So it makes sense to be running that, even if it's just a one of, and you're not running any other Trap Tricks cards. Then you've got one Warning, of course, Torrential. Compulsory seems to be a very popular choice this format, especially with the hands being so abundant. Being able to compulse a hand to your opponent's hand, especially to your opponent's hand. Anyway, to your opponent's hand. Sorry, I just totally derailed my train of thought there. Anyway, to your opponent's hand allows you to make some really devastating plays because of the speed of this format. If you can stop your opponent from clearing your field this format for one turn, you can really make a huge play during your next turn. We saw that during this tournament, that if you could stop your opponent's move for one turn, it could allow you to just totally go off on them. And that's especially true in this deck that has so much aggressive power in it. Then he's got 3 Fiendish Chain, which I think is an interesting choice, but considering the fact that he relies on armor so much, he really wants to have not only that effect negation, but the ability to block attacks in case his opponent goes for an extra deck monster that can run over his Geargia armor, or in case his opponent gets something like a Moral Talk or something like that. It just really makes sense to have the Fiendish Chain, which not only negates the effects, but also blocks their ability to attack. It also stops a Hoot Cake, which even if it stays on the field because of Angeli, even if you can't destroy it, it stops it for a turn and allows you to stall out against it, and then Angeli's effect, of course, wears off, I believe. I'm not certain. Anyway, let's move on. Then, of course, you've got the crazy back row hate lineup. You've got the double 7 tools of the bandit and triple wiretap, because he just could not let those trap cards go. And once again, that really points to an extremely aggressive strategy. In a format like this, where you're going to be seeing a lot of back row, but not just back row that bolsters an aggressive strategy, something like artifacts, where the back row allows you to go for artifacts, which not only put field presence on the board, but also destroy cards on the board. It's really important to have a lot of back row hate, like the triple wiretap, triple or double 7 tools of the bandit, in order to stop those plays and allow yourself to put through those aggressive plays. Notice that he doesn't run MSTs. That's a really interesting choice. He doesn't run MST at all. In my mind, that's a little bit dangerous, especially considering the popularity of Boojins up until very recently. However, considering the fact that he was probably expecting to play against a lot of Madolches and a lot of Hat, and since this deck doesn't really lose to anything like Vanity's Emptiness, since it has so much removal in it, and since it doesn't lose to things like, Rivalry of Warlords or Gozen Match, he doesn't really actually need to be running the MSTs in this deck. He just needs to be able to stop those traps in order to go for his big plays. And then, of course, since he is expecting a lot of Madolche matches, and of course the Mirror match, it's really important to run those Black Horn of Heaven for him. I actually talked about in the other video about Nate Forte's deck that he didn't run the Black Horn in the main deck, or he didn't worry about the Black Horn. He was running Lance instead of something like Wiretap because of the abundance of Hat in this format. But this deck actually has a really good mirror match, or a good matchup against the Hat deck, so he doesn't really have to worry about that. He really has to stop those more aggressive decks like this one and like Madolches that make really big explosive plays in a single turn, in order to make sure that he can take those out game 1, and then get into he can side out the Black Horn for some of his side deck cards. Some really interesting side deck choices came into here as well. For instance, the triple Nobleman of Crossout, which is amazing in the mirror match. It's also good against basically any hand deck. If your opponent sets a monster and some back row, generally this format, it's safe to assume it's either a Geargia Armor or a hand. And if you can get rid of either one of those, then that is just amazing. The Nobleman of Crossout gets rid of it with no fear of setting off the hand, and it gets the Geargia Armor out of the way permanently. So this is actually a really amazing card to have in the side deck. I really like it. It's also going to be fun once Shaddolls come out. Then you've got the 1D Fissure, and he's also got a Macrocosmos over here, which I thought was really interesting. Double Xyz Reborn. I don't know what he sided this in against, but it's a spectacular card for a deck like this. Being able to Xyz Reborn an Exciton Knight late in the game and just blowing away your opponent at that point. Being able to Xyz Reborn into a Geargia Cross and reestablish your field. There are just so many good things that you can combine with Xyz Reborn to get some just amazing plays. And you've got the Needle Sealing to clear the board. Just some cool trap card lineups in the side deck, and of course the Debunk. The extra deck is fairly self-explanatory, just some basic Xyz monsters that you're going to want to have in a deck. You'll notice that this format, you're not seeing Cowboy as much, and that's because a lot of the plays this format that get really big and explosive, they don't really need Cowboy. They can actually do the damage they need to do without having to be able to push that little 800 over the limit. And of course, he also has Black Ship of Corn, which does whittle away at his opponent's life points to make sure that if he does go for a big push, it's very likely that he can end the game there. So that's that deck. I hope you guys like it. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. I will see you in the top 32 of the next great Yu-Gi tuber. Be sure to check out that video once it comes out. The round will be starting on Wednesday. Meanwhile, I got a jet. See you guys.